You may well be thinking to yourself, what on earth is a laser doing in a woodworking shop? But bear with, don't click off yet, all will be revealed, because this is the Ortur Laser Master 3. I'm going to talk and unbox at the same time so that I don't delay getting inside and seeing what it actually looks like in the flesh. But I'm really excited to see whether this lives up to the marketing claims and my expectations. That being that it can cut through 12mm ply. It's the same as a lot of other lasers that are on the market in as much as it's a diode laser. But this has got 4 diodes in it. So instead of the normal 5.5 watt output that you get, this has got a claimed 22 watt output. So I really can't wait to see if it'll do what they claim it'll do. So in the box I've got an air pump, okay? I think that's a pack of sample materials to cut. Paper, wood, a dog tag, a water wave chain. No idea what that is, but anyway, that's the contents of that pack. And then I've got the laser itself. And let's see what's inside. That felt really pleasant. Wow. It looks really well packaged. Nice little touch in a little plastic box instead of a bag. I like that. Very nice. And we've even got the obligatory goggles inside of their own little bags so you don't get them scratched. Nice touch. Let's see what we've got. I'm assuming that's a front rail or a back rail, and that's the other. The side. That's the gantry. That's the laser head, power supply, power cable, USB cable, some little bits of test ply, that'll be for the air cooler. Wi-Fi aerial, drive belt, power leads, and the other side rail. So after carefully checking all the parts, there isn't any damage on any of them, so the packaging appears to have been at the very least adequate. The only thing I have found is on this side rail there are some, what at first I thought were scratches, but they're not. They're like little tails of glue. They almost feel a bit like hot glue that's left on the rail, but that's going to clean off with a little bit of solvent or maybe a bit of soapy water, so nothing there to worry about. The rest all look in perfect condition. Moving on to the documentation, there's an addendum about a screw that might be installed that will reduce the working area and how to adjust it, the value to adjust in laser Gerbil. 2 declarations of conformity to state that it conforms to CE standards. Then there's a little instruction leaflet on how to connect the air pump, quality control certificate, And then we've got this nice little chart. Oh, that's nice to see. So there's one chart for light burn settings and another chart for laser Gerbil, telling you the type of material and what settings to use, speeds, etc. and power for each piece of software. And then the manual. The manual looks quite well laid out actually. Nice clear pictures, simple straightforward statements, nice and easy to follow, and even how to set it up on your mobile phone. Why would you want to do that and make your life more difficult? I much prefer a nice big screen. Step 1, slide the cable through the left hand rail, paying attention not to trap the cable, and then screw it in place with an 8mm M4. So here's the rail, here's the cable. And the cable's got to go over to the left so it doesn't get trapped. Step 3, connect the right hand rail, slide on the gantry, right hand rail, with the laser bracket facing to the front. And then we've got this little detail here, so this wire has got to bend down out the way. So there's the connection sockets for that little cable to plug into. So that little detail, that picture, there's a tiniest little gap there, little recess in the aluminium. You've got to get that cable up into to enable the bar, the front rail, to sit into its recess without pinching it. Then step 7 is to slide these little rollers in that'll take the drive belt it says in the book not to tighten them up yet, because you need to use that as the adjuster to put tension on the belt. So this bit's a little awkward. This is a view of the inside of this end, and you've got to get the timing belt into this slot and then around the pulley that's completely enclosed apart from this slot inside the casing. That was pretty simple. So once you've got the belt in, that's got to go over and under this little connection here and then slide over the wheel. So I'll do the same on the other side. Now that we've got the belts on, we need to install the belt tensioner in step 10 in the manual. This little grub screw here, let me get that gantry out of the way, has got to go in this little wee hole there. So with those two tightening screws in place, the next job is to push the gantry right back against the end stops, and they're just in here. So both of them back up tight, holding the gantry back in place against those two end stops. We slide the belt into that little groove on both sides. Now for this, I'm going to turn it upside down and get it onto its feet on the bench and hope that I can get to those grub screws with it the right way up. So I want to make sure at this point that everything is nicely in position. So I'm just going to tighten this grub screw up now and bring the bowl in alignment with this little mark here, which is apparently, according to the manual, the perfect tension for the belt. And once doing that, we need to make sure that the gantry stays at the back, up against the grub screws. So step number 13, screwing the Wi-Fi aerial, we'll take that as done. Step number 14 states to install the screw in the first hole. If you have the ZLD, then install the screw in the second hole. I could find no other reference in the manual as to what the ZLD was, so I looked it up on the website, and it stands for XAxis lifting device. I don't have that, so I'm going to be using the first hole. So that goes in there. I'll do the same on the other side, and that acts as a physical stop. So step 15, we're going to connect the data cable from the front rail to the X-axis, and then we're going to connect in the X-axis stepper motor. So that's the primary connector to the front rail. So this is an ideal opportunity to pop this little one in before we trap or cover that socket with that larger cable. And that wants to come up there and across to there, and we've got some holes in the frame here to take cable ties that will bring us about halfway down the rail so that there is enough flex to allow that X-axis to travel back to the front. The drive belt the drive belt is right behind this rail, so you need to be careful that you don't trap it with a cable tie, or it won't perform as you'd expect. And one more cable tie to this little clip, and then that gets tightened up in there, and this plugs into the back of the stepper motor. I just want to get that around that protective sheath. There. So the next step in the manual is to connect the laser cable itself. I haven't been instructed in the manual to fit the laser yet, but I'm just going to pop it in place loosely because I don't want it flailing around on the bench. Straighten this cable out, and that goes in to the socket appropriately marked L, and then once again we've got 3 little holes in the rail to allow us to keep the wire out the way of whatever we're working on. Same as before, the drive belt for the X-axis is right in behind that hole, so you want to be careful that you don't trap it with the cable tie. Point to note, as I was just testing everything was moving freely, I noticed that the laser was touching the front rail, because I've got the 20 watt laser, which is obviously a larger unit. So I've moved the screw from position 1 back to position 2 to make sure the laser doesn't bang into that front rail. And also the distance clearance between the bottom of the laser and the bed that the machine's going to sit on is very, very small, and I need it to be larger than it is. I want to be able to get a 50mm board underneath it to engrave it. So I'm going to move the bracket on the back of the laser down to the lower position to increase my clearance height. And finally, on to connectivity. I'm going to use the supplied USB lead. So USB lead into the side of the front rail, into your chosen device. Power lead into the power socket. And there's a supplied micro SD card holder. So if you pop the micro SD card out, there's a little slot in the front rail right beside the primary connection for the cables. And it's pins down. Slot the card in and you're ready for initial fire up. So with all the cables connected, we're now ready to fire up the laser and to configure our chosen software. For this test, I'm going to be using Lightburn, as I'm more familiar with it than I am with Laser Gerbil. On the laser itself, make sure your stop button isn't depressed. So give it a twist to make sure it's not in the depressed position. Make sure your key is turned to the right so it's in the on position, and then hold in the power button for a few seconds. The light will flash and then the laser will home itself. So with the laser homed in Lightburn, you can go into devices and you can try Find My Laser. It didn't find it on mine. So I went to create manually. I chose Gerbil, hit next, serial USB, hit next. I named it, and then I set the X-axis to 380, because if you remember, I had to move the screw back to position 2 and the Y-axis to 400. Hit next. Set the origin. The origin of this machine is the front left, and leave auto home enabled. Hit next and finish, and then it'll appear in the list. Click to select. Hit make default. And click OK. And then the laser should reinitialize, and theoretically we're ready to go. Now, as a simple test, just to draw this video to a close and to prove proof of assembly and that I've got the laser working, I've got a piece of ply as my test piece, and I'm just going to burn my logo in to the surface. So I'm going to start by moving the laser head over on top of the workpiece, just using the basic controls in Lightburn. And then on my particular laser, I've noticed some previous models were different. I've got a little focus lever here, so if I move that down to the bottom, drop the laser down so that touches, and then lock it in place, my focal length is set. I really like that. That's a lovely feature. Much better than my other machine, which required a little piece of plastic to put underneath. So my workpiece is in place, my laser position is set, focal length is set. The last thing I want to do is just to set the details within Lightburn. So
looking at the sheet that comes with it, it says that I can set the speed up to 20,000. I think that's insanely fast, so I'm going to go for 10,200. And again, the sheet says if you set the speed at 20,000, sorry, power should be set at 80. So I've dropped the power to 40 because I've got approximately half the speed. And line interval, I'm going to set at 0.12 and see what result I get. So I'm just going to use the frame button in Lightburn, make sure the laser stays within the workpiece, pop my goggles on and hit the play button. That is insanely quick. Wow. 2 minutes 45. So I ran 2 more tests, changing nothing but up in the DPI setting. So I've got the original one here, which was around 150 DPI, 2 3/4 minutes, 300 DPI, 4 3/4 minutes, and 600 DPI at 11.5 minutes. And I think the difference, the 600 DPI, as you can imagine, is far better. A real beautiful finish. In summary, and to bring the video to a close, the delivery time I believe was about a week, maybe slightly over a week, so really not bad considering where it came from. The packaging, I think, was more than adequate. There was no damage to any part of it. The assembly time was really absolutely minimal. It was extended for me through videoing it and showing everything that I did, but I really think you could assemble that in well under an hour, including time to make coffee. The instruction manual was particularly clear, really good, very little lost in the translation from the original language into English, and operation of it, first impressions, because that really isn't a test, that is just making sure that the machine works. But operationally it seems really good. Really am pleased with it so far. The speed is really impressive. The fit and finish of the machine is again really impressive. It's quite aesthetically pleasing to the point where I end up thinking it's a shame something couldn't be done about the ungainly cabling. But overall, really impressed. Now, as it states in the comments below, I did not buy this machine. This machine was sent to me so that I could perform this review, but I rarely accept offers like that. I've accepted this one because I'm particularly interested to see whether this could be a template cutting replacement for a CNC machine, and I'm going to experiment with that and the machine in general over the next couple of weeks, and then that will be the topic, the content for my next video. So we're going to see just how well it cuts. I hope you'll join me for that video, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, give us a thumbs up. Why not consider subscribing to see what else I get up to in these vids, and don't forget to click the bell icon. Thanks so much for watching, and see you next time in the GT Woodshop. Ta-ra.